The term living weapon are given to the most dangerous and troublesome species. The ones with deadly claws and fangs, with poisons that can melt through superalloys and densely packed muscles that allow organisms to lift close to 300 times their weight. Living weapons is the term used for biologically superior organisms within the Galactic Federation. And humans. They all look unassuming at first. A bipedal ape that had barely breached the stars. A budding civilization that has yet to taste the wonders and horrors of the vastness of space. And yet they are the most ferocious beast the Federation has ever tamed. Mark was recently hired to serve aboard our ship as the chief security officer. Of course, we all had laughed then. Even among the clumsy human species, Mark seemed to belong to the bottom caste. A large frame with a portly belly that was called fat by humans. A state achieved by overindulging in foods and drink, they say. Ian, our chief engineer, we joked, would have been a better security officer. He was a Vlaxin, a member of a tall and athletic species, with 6 arms and powerful jaws. It was out understanding that Mark had gotten this position thanks to so-called human bureaucracy, and we scoffed at him. It wasn't until our 3rd trip through the murky Falar system did we understand how wrong we were. The Khan, a race so bloodthirsty and so battle-hungry, they might as well have been nothing but animals. All their sentience and great minds being used just for war. Hulking brutes of impossible size and stature and armed with weapons that even we cannot fully recreate to this day. If any deserved the title of a living weapon, it was the Khan. A raiding party had caught up to us during our return ship to the Copernican system and had immediately boarded us. Even with their advanced technology, the Khan loved nothing more than an aggressive close-quarters battle, returning covered from blood. We all had already come to the conclusion that we were dead. Like encountering a natural disaster. This is it, we thought. The idea of resisting, the idea of returning alive has already been quickly forgotten as we huddled in our ship's bridge. And yet, even as the Khan tore through our pathetic defense and stood above us all, ready to massacre the crew, one being stood in their way. It was Mark, quietly tugging at his too small uniform we had given him as a joke, pulling his cap to the side so he could see better. Despite being remarkably tall for a human, Mark still had to crane his neck up to see the Khan that stood in front of him. The Khan smirked and laughed, arrogantly reaching to grab at the ant before him, while Mark simply stood there silently. What happened next was too fast for any of us to react. The Khan, the oh-so-mighty Khan, as he reached out to grab Mark by the neck, suddenly stopped and screamed out in pain, clutching at his face, holding 2 empty sockets where his eyes should be. It has come to my attention now that humans are somehow able to rank the fat they carry. Through unknown means, they became able to master and shape the fat in their bodies, building it in the correct places and in the correct amount. And behind this fat the humans cultivate were powerful muscles, unlike those they as a weaker species are born with. Mark by now was covered in the dry purple blood of the Khan, his hand soaked in the gore of the Khan. After he had made a quick jab and gouged the larger alien's eyes out, he immediately moved again, punching the alien several times in the abdomen. Later I was informed each blow was targeted to an organ the humans called the kidney, which causes immense pain when struck, even from blows to the surface of the body. The Khan's humanoid structure must have had the same organ structure, as the mighty alien toppled in pain and surprise that Mark could have unleashed such pain, followed by the human grabbing the alien's head by the tusks and ripping them out, jamming each one back into the Khan's skull. By now, the 3 remaining Khan had come to their senses and began rushing towards Mark to tear him apart. Even if he had miraculously slain one, there was nothing an unarmed human could do against 3 superior living weapons, especially specimens such as the Khan that stood at the peak of all dangerous life forms. And yet, the human Mark did not seem fazed in the slightest. He greeted the charge head-on, plucking the Khan's arm mid-punch, as if he was moving in slow motion. Using his entire body, Mark grabbed the Khan's arm and twisted it hard. Not expecting the sudden force, the The Khan could only scream as his own momentum caused his arm to shatter as he cartwheeled to the ground. The second and third, seeing this, roared with anger and rage, swinging wildly at Mark, who despite his size was agile enough to suck under all their attacks with ease. Moving away from the two bodies in front of him, Mark charged at one of the remaining Khan, grabbing at the larger foe's legs to trip him up and cause the Khan to fall. Even as strong as they were, the Khan were a bipedal species, and were naturally weak against a push to the front or back. The human used this against them and climbed up the falling Khan. As he hit the floor, Mark attacked at the Khan's head with intense precision, striking his dome, his chin, and his throat with powerful punches. The Khan didn't even have time to defend himself as he hit the ground head first, creating a large dent in our starship's floor. And then there was only a single Khan left. All of us were shocked. To take out a single Khan required an entire space force armed to the teeth. And even then, at least half of the soldiers would perish. To take on not one, but 3 Khan alone was unheard of. Even more unnatural was doing it unarmed, with no biological weapons to speak of. The final Khan must have understood this as well. But all the same, he charged at Mark, standing head to toe in purple gore as the human met the Khan's charge. Nowhere evenly matched as the Khan began pushing the smaller human backwards. We thought Mark had reached his limits. After all, he had just performed a feat not a single member of the Federation had accomplished before. But then Mark had planted his feet, and in a single motion, thrusted his hips forward and lifted the large Khan over his head. The alien must have weighed easily 3 times that of Mark, and yet he sailed over the human's head as if he weighed nothing, landing headfirst into the ground, his body limp. Mark had saved us that day, a single human who, with no weapons, no teeth, no claws, and no poison, met the onslaught of 4 members of the most ferocious species out there. This is my tale to those who would dare underestimate humans. They know very well they are weak and fragile, born small in a big world. It has been so even when all the humans had to war against was themselves. They unlocked the secrets of their own biology. They mastered how to kill, how to strike precisely. Even without fangs or claws, they had become living weapons all on their own, as if to spit at the face of their god. Do not think their smaller frames are a disadvantage. For humans have mastered the art of killing and deserve to be considered amongst living weapons.